Hello and welcome to the Video Lab podcast. My name is Sam and I'm here with my good friend AJ.
Hey there.
Together we review movies, TV shows, and streaming content.
On today's episode, we have special guest Paul Savides.
Hi, I'm Paul. Happy to be here.
Open the pod bay doors, Hal.
What is it you want, Barry? You want the moon?
I want the truth!
I see dead people.
You shall not pass!
You'll shoot your eye out, kid.
This is Sparta!
I am your father.
Let us fight to free the world, to do away with greed, with hate and intolerance. Let us all unite!
A teenage girl and her father travel to a remote alien moon, aiming to strike it rich. They've secured a contract to harvest a large deposit of elusive gems hidden in the depths of the moon's toxic forest. But there are others roving the wilderness, and the job quickly devolves into a fight to survive.
AJ's got such like a deep, luscious voice compared to me. I listened back on the podcast and I sound like a little shrill girl.
He does have a great voice. It's kind of upsetting.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
Some of us never really get out of puberty, AJ. We're just ever in a flux of puberty.
Mm-hmm.
My kid's also still awake and rolling around upstairs, so we'll see how this goes, I guess. Paul, do you have kids yet?
No.
Yeah, Paul's right around the corner from having kids. He's
Right.
He's on the precipice.
A couple of vital steps before that.
If you do have a kid, Paul, what I would not advise you to do is go onto a poisonous moon and try to harvest nectar-looking gems. Because it didn't seem to work out for these folks. Did either of you two understand what was going on at the beginning of this movie?
I had to watch it twice.
Oh, you did? Wow. No, I bet that helped, because it is kind of deliberately, there's not a huge amount of detail throughout the whole movie.
Well, maybe, unfortunately for me, the first time I watched it, I was a bit confused about what the watch was all about.
Oh, sure.
But that was vital information that they delivered in the first, 20 seconds of the film, where it's like apparently the spaceship was orbiting once or twice more, and the watch was the countdown to the last orbit of the spaceship. And I did not catch that.
Uh-huh.
So I didn't get why she was looking at the watch throughout the movie. I was like, okay, what is that? That's interesting. So nice watch.
She described it as 3 jumps, I think. And so she I remember seeing her set it.
3 cycles?
That's atmosphere.
What happened?
Oh no.
I was playing catch up like the whole first half hour, I would say. Like, wait, okay, who are these people? What are they doing? Why are they here? Because all the lingo they said too in the beginning when they're in their little space pod, I was like, what is happening right now?
Yeah, I think it's deliberately pretty skimpy on the they give you those sci-fi terms and stuff of like a world. I mean, this happens in a lot of like sci-fi and fantasy where they tease out some sort of lore or terminology that you just don't know, and then they like spend 10 minutes rubbing it in your face before they explain it.
These losers aren't going to know what's happening for the first hour.
Yeah, exactly.
I will say though, the look of this film, I loved right away the initial analog feel of the spaceship where it's not very fancy knobs and buttons to it, and the retro feel of even the watch, what Paul was talking about, and the suits themselves, how each of the suits kind of portray their characters' personality traits. At least that's how I took it. And
no, I see that. I definitely get that.
Explain that. What do you mean?
Like you just see Pedro Pascal's character, who is, hold on, I researched this, AJ.
You know his name?
Ezra, compared to like C and her dad, and even the more grunt type mercenaries at the end. It was just cool how the wardrobe person put a lot of forethought into like how they should look, so you can easily identify them, but also kind of get. We're not sure if Ezra is like dangerous or not. So he's kind of in this brown, sort of dangerous, but still at the same time, he's got a wider faceplate than the other people. So you're kind of like drawn into him versus like the grunts who have just like these really scary daunting looking outfits.
Yeah, they are menacing looking. Yeah, no, I didn't think of that. I like that observation.
I love just the helmets. For a minute, I thought, okay, are these like CG helmet plates? Like, how are you filming a movie with all this lighting and you have helmet plates the entire time? But of course, they don't have the budget to do everything CG here. It's kind of insane just to think about how you would film that entire film where you have just all those reflections the entire time and you have to deal with it.
I'll tell you, if they are real faceplates, it was probably a pain in the butt not trying to get reflections of camera or crew or other lights.
In fact, it's a good you brought that up because I saw an interview.
Paul did some research.
What a guess.
They were talking about that. I did. I watched some YouTube videos.
Oh man, what a champ.
They had just a lot to say about the helmets. They may not have done it the same way again because it was such a pain. But it's just one of the things that made the movie just so interesting. They had the camera people dressed up in these black cloaks.
Oh God!
So they had so that's probably partially why you couldn't see the camera people in any of the shots because they were just all black. And they said the crew hiding around would duck into the ferns whenever a take started.
Oh man.
Just imagine how much sweat would be drenched in the cameraman's outfits.
I was thinking that. I mean, I was thinking how sweaty all these people must be. I don't know where this forest is, but it looks hot.
Do you know, Paul, was it filmed on a set versus live places?
Live places. It was all natural lighting too. At least on the outside shots.
Wow.
So it was such a commitment to that, which I think is what the movie gets so right, is just that commitment to that style. And to what they were going for. It wasn't, no half measures, right? It was, we're going to do this film where we're out here, in the rainforest. I think it was northern Washington.
That makes sense.
Well, not really, just natural lighting. And even the audio recording was through in-helmet mics, right? There was no after the fact voiceover.
Well, that would explain why I couldn't understand them for like 3/4 of the movie.
Oh yeah,
right.
That's actually one complaint I definitely had. Is it was sometimes it was really difficult to hear them, but it was a cool ambiance, even just because it was a realistic effect.
I caught word of the fade. Couldn't resist one last quick job.
Now the kid. Oh, repairman.
I cocked it up for a time during the peak of the rush. I never caught your name, friend. It's Damon. Nice to meet you, Damon. I'm Ezra.
It's interesting to contrast the helmet thing against a film like Gravity, where the entire film of Gravity was all CG masks.
Yeah, it's literally an entire CGI movie.
Yeah. Or was it Ad Astra? Maybe I'm thinking of Ad Astra.
Well, it's funny because the helmet thing came up in Ad Astra too.
Yeah.
Where they had difficulty with the lighting and stuff.
I mean, just imagine too, aside from the sweat, just the condensation from you breathing.
Yeah, and there was condensation on inside her helmet a few times.
Yeah,
Right, it was when she was running away from the scavengers or whoever. She just like ended up heavy breathing, and you just see this condensation. You think, oh my God, that's awful. I do not want to be there.
No, it looks uncomfortable all the time.
You're right, though, Paul. The look and feel of this film was really consistent all the way through, from the design of everything to the planet and the color grading. I feel like I want to get my complaints off my chest right away before I forget them, because one other thing that stuck out to me was the relationship between C and her dad, Damon. That was so weird, right?
Yeah, you could kind of see what they were doing, where like their relationship is strained, probably to do something with the mother, but he was like kind of an asshole for no. I mean, we just don't. We could obviously not see the whole length of their relationship, but he was kind of a jerk to her the whole time.
Did either of you watch this movie? Was based on they first did a short film in 2014.
I ended up watching that. Yeah.
Okay, so you probably know the character of the father in that short film and the character of the father in this film is just so different. Just the architect, just the change that they made. Because in the short film, the father is extremely supportive of C, or at least the C character.
Yeah, he wouldn't shut the fuck up about how good her drawings were in the short story.
He's like, I'm going to buy you paints. Like, you need to be drawing. And in this movie is absolutely the opposite. It is, stop reading that effing book. Yeah. You need to learn how to harvest gems from this thing or whatever. So it almost seemed as if They wanted to make the father as unlikable as possible, so you would buy that she's like, yeah, I guess I'll go with this dude.
Leftovers from the rush. On my last tour, the forest was full of these fringeling crank teams.
Do we have time for this?
This is amateur work. They might have left something behind. Bring me the kit and the water.
The relationship is strained, but obviously when he dies, she like is pretty distraught, and it clearly turns around.
I would argue no.
No, you think she wasn't distraught?
I don't think so.
She's shocked, at least.
Maybe, yeah.
She clearly has complicated feelings for her father, but there's clearly like love there.
I mean, she went from like being distraught to like throwing mac and cheese containers around in the spaceship.
I think that was her just blowing off steam because, I mean, she's like this, 14-year-old girl all alone now on this planet. And she just watched her like only life support die. And that just seemed like blowing off steam to me.
I think given their strained relationship, it's fine. And I think it's partially why we view Damon as an asshole in this compared to the short film, is probably to have us buy into Ezra more as a likable character that is like a replacement father.
Well, yeah, I think actually that's what's interesting about Ezra is he comes off very early on as a villain figure. And that, I think, transcends throughout the movie into a very much a fatherly figure by the end of things. And he kind of replaces that, at least character presence. I doubt they're going to like be buddy forever, or maybe, I don't know, but they have a really good relationship.
Yeah, by the end of it, I feel like they're really tight.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Let me just say though too, I did not know his name was Ezra until I looked it up on Wikipedia because I couldn't understand him at all when he was introducing himself.
I did forget that at one point because he only says it once, I think, and it's not like she's calling him Ezra. I don't even think she addresses him by a name really.
The other thing that stuck out to me was when Ezra and C go to the weird forest people's hut to get medicine for him because he was shot by C. I did not think the cut from the one guy saying, "We want the girl and we'll give you the special nectar jewel stuff," was done as well as it could have, because it just cuts from her running out of the hut and only the little boy character runs after her. And then just magically she finds Ezra after that.
Now, as you can see, I have sustained a trauma to my shoulder. And would much like to flush it with your magic juice. In return for your gracious offering, we are prepared to compensate with generosity in equal measure.
Here is our offer.
I'm sorry, I don't understand.
For the girl.
That is a bold offer.
But it is inevitable all the same that she will be reborn just like me. That is the reason why you were brought here. Not the Orlac.
I agree with that now that you mention it. It was very confusing. Like, okay, she's off on her own and I'm like, oh, wow, she's just abandoning him and they're gone now. But then I think he was broadcasting to her too on like a shortwave radio.
I have written down just for the notes I was taking when I was watching it, time jump, ? How long was she gone?
Yeah.
Because I had the exact same thought. I'm like, what exactly is going on here?
Like, did he kill them?
I didn't get that vibe.
Because like, why would they just let him go? I don't know. It was weird. It's kind of too harsh of a cut.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I think they probably I bet they had more footage and they just trimmed down because it probably didn't feel right. But it does feel like an odd transition out of there.
I wonder if they were trying to show that she's in a manic state right now. She has no idea how much time is passing. She's just moving. She's terrified and she's trying to get away. But I don't think they necessarily pulled it off.
Yeah, well, and because it seems like almost no time passes for Ezra. Like he's still dealing with his infection and he's having a tough time and she's like starving and stuff. So which gives the impression that she's been out there for quite a while. I mean, obviously she didn't go to sleep or anything, but
they probably would have just benefited from like cutting to a B-roll shot of just a time lapse or something.
Yeah, that probably would have been a better way to do it.
Just to communicate that time gap, but whatever. It was a small little detail.
So I want to go back to the talk of the aesthetic and the analog vibe. First it made me think of how cool the original 1979 Alien movie was because of that analog feel of tech, and that's very much how this is, where it feels like very gritty. Nothing is very futuristic. It's just very, I'm trying to think of the word, something punk maybe. I actually describe this movie as like an indie space western because it feels like you could transplant this entire story to the American West and like some people doing the gold rush, and you can even see it in their weapons. They're using like a space flintlock rifle and a like flintlock pistol. They look like they're from the 19th century. They look very janky and old school. Even just like the way this story feels, it feels like a Western story, especially with the mineral element to it. But I think that aesthetic and pioneer vibe almost that they have really works well in this.
Paul, did you ever see the movie Tron, the newest one?
Wait, was it Tron Legacy?
Tron Legacy, yeah.
Yes, I did. I have.
Tell me if you agree with this or not. I think to AJ's point, with sci-fi movies that feel more analog, feel more real, and we can then place ourselves in there versus movies where they rely so heavily on CG or just the overall aesthetic is so clean and futuristic looking to a point it takes you out of it and it's just more like a shiny thing to look at.
When I think of shiny things from Tron Legacy, I mostly think of the de-aging effects and how much that pulled me out of the movie. But yeah, I think generally I get what you're saying. I agree.
Yeah, that stuff feels very sterile. And Paul, did you have a thought that you wanted to bounce?
Just as far as Westerns go, obviously, Prospect, right?
Mm-hmm.
Prospecting, like it's so clear that this wants to be a Western, and is a Western, right? Just from the subject matter to the execution, it is very Western-like. Especially, I think the Ezra character, he's very, very much kind of a Wild West type guy.
Yeah.
He gave me Han Solo vibes.
Yeah, totally. No, he's a lone wolf. He's almost has an accent. Am I wrong in that? It's
like Southern, I think, or something.
Yeah, it's almost a Southern accent.
You will lead me to your ship and fly me into connection orbit for the freighter slingback. In exchange for this, I will not kill you. This is a good deal. You killed my father, so I'm being very generous.
Your offer is indeed generous, and I would be more than happy to sign and seal, save for one glaring slip. My ship.
You don't have a ship?
Well, I did. Then there was an event with my crew concerning a bit of our lack in words and metal flew. And now I don't.
I liked this movie a lot, but I also, this was like an hour and a half, a little over an hour and a half.
Mm-hmm. I think it was exactly an hour and a half.
I feel like it needed to either be a little bit longer, or my gut felt like it was almost just like an episode of a longer series. Because it was like this little off adventure. I was like wanting the next phase of it to be explained. Like, okay, they're going to the spaceship now. Like, are they going to pay off her debt, or like, are they going to be together? What's going to happen next in this adventure? It felt like a continued series type movie to me.
Yeah, it does feel fleeting in that way, where the world is fleshed out a little bit, and I think it's really interesting. But there's clearly a lot that. And I think that kind of what makes sci-fi films like these good is that it leaves you wanting more. And this is clearly such a low budget movie that they don't have the time or resources to fully flesh out this universe. And it's more concerned with the aesthetic, and I think the character performances here are what really set this film apart, rather than any specific writing element.
The writing was good, don't get me wrong, but the aesthetic, for some reason, I just can't get over the suits. The suits speak so much to me, and
they're cool analog suits. I mean, they look like they're pioneers. It looks jaggedy space suits.
You know what that reminds me of, actually? Have either of you played Titanfall?
A hair bit. I don't remember any of the suits or anything.
It sort of reminds me of suits in that a little bit.
What you were saying about the character performances, I think the performances were fine. I think the characters, they didn't have great arcs. They didn't really go anywhere. I feel like that's the part of the movie that let me down. I didn't feel like extremely invested in these characters. I think they showed emotion, but they didn't really evolve at any much during this movie.
I suppose it is kind of a static arc for both of them, but honestly, I feel like this is like one of my favorite Pedro Pascal performances I've seen. Especially after coming out of seeing him in Wonder Woman, this is so much better utilized, and he does so well with his emotion, his pain, just like the way they carry themselves. I think is really good. But I do agree that their arcs could be a little static, and I think that just kind of the feel of the film itself. It is kind of episodic, where you could see this being like one episode in a series or something, and having more fleshed out plot lines, and I feel like that's kind of how like a Western would be, you know.
It would really benefit, I think, from a sequel, which I don't think it will get because the return on investment was very low. But
yeah, I think it could use a sequel. Whether like needs one is another question. I think it's a good one-off.
Do you guys have a guess at what the budget was for this movie, or do you know already?
Well, I had to look it up because I was curious, because it's clearly low budget. And when you're getting into this low budget, kind of like when we watch Sputnik, you just kind of like need to know for a frame of reference. So this is under 4 million, it said.
Yep.
Railing in Pedro Pascal. Like, it's really cool that he's doing this low budget indie. It makes me have some mad respect for him. And it also, they have a fucking killer soundtrack for this movie.
There's one track on it that I really love. It's called C, which is, C's aim, I think. It's kind of big strings, and then it sort of goes to this choral, almost operatic part. They had some shots in the movie that were just kind of these long, drawn-out shots. The camera was almost placed up in the canopy of the forest, and it was just showing like the full entirety of the forest while playing this beautiful soundtrack in the background. And you just kind of were able to sit there and take it in and just kind of feel this location for a while. Those are just some of my favorite parts.
Yeah, totally agree. And that just as a filming perspective, it was cool just to like watch them walk around. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, let me go, AJ. Seriously.
Yeah, sorry.
How long did it take you guys to figure out they were trying to mine gems and like what the purpose of the gems were?
It took me about 5 seconds. I mean, like once they like in the first attempt at what they were doing, you're really confused, like, okay. But then once they're like starting to mix mixtures and stuff, like I think it becomes like they even pull out a stone right. Or are you saying before we know it's a stone, I guess?
Either or. I was just like, okay, after I even figured out they were getting gemstones, I was like, what purpose does this serve? And
well, I think it was given, especially the title, it seems pretty clear it's really valuable stuff, and they only reinforce that going forward. But I think it's kind of a neat technical aspect where they have to like pull out this fleshy looking thing out of this pit that can like kill you. Yeah, I thought it was like a neat little touch of you have to do all this weird sciencey stuff to harvest this incredibly rare mineral.
That made me think more of Alien than anything.
Oh, sure.
Was it an egg sac that they pulled out? I wasn't really sure what it was, but it was definitely organic, right? It was this kind of fleshy organic material that they pulled out, and you had sort of this feeling like, oh, they probably shouldn't be doing this. This doesn't feel right.
It was going to be a baby they were going to pull out of there.
Yeah. And it's the part of the movie where the mama alien comes back and eats them.
I honestly thought it was going to be a baby for like 2 seconds.
Well, they called it like the queen's nest, so I assume it was eggs. So, but the eggs must have been there for a long time. If this was the place where they were for the rush, I'm not sure how long it would take for those eggs to hatch.
It kind of felt more to me like this was like a clam situation with like a pearl, or an oyster.
Well, that's a good metaphor.
It's an organic thing that like. I think the way pearls are made is the oysters suck in like nutrients and stuff, and it just compacts pearls.
Are you as a Pearl expert, AJ? I can verify this. Yes.
Yeah, no, that's good. Thank you. It's something like that. But yeah, so that's how I kind of like thought of it, because
That's now canon in my mind. So that's exactly what's happening.
yeah.
In their own way, C and Ezra discovered the pearl of their new friendship together at the end of this movie.
It's beautiful. I have a big question. I don't know if I've seen this in a couple different sci-fi films, but what is it with drugs in sci-fi films, and especially eyedroppers?
Okay.
Like,
in my notes, eyedropper drugs, exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point. Why do so many sci-fi movies do this?
did you write that? Yes,
Yeah.
that's what I wrote in my notes. I'm like, why? What is this canon? Is this why? And then there's like this bubblegum pills they're chewing, and they all chew it. They're three of the characters, I suppose pretty much the only characters,
Right.
they all chew these, and they chew it in the same really exaggerated fashion.
Uh-huh.
And I thought that was so interesting. Like they didn't have their own distinct ways of like chewing. It was very like,
I don't know, man. Between the eye drops and the gum, I don't know if it's just like a thing to calm you down or give you a little rush. Like Paul, didn't you agree with this that the eyedroppers were meant to help the dad fall asleep? Because that's what C said.
Yeah.
Right.
yeah, that's what they're. It's not. I'm not confused on what the purpose of them is. It's just a matter of like, why do you see this so much in sci-fi films? It's like a thing they focus on.
I think it's just like, what's a method that in the world, in reality as we know it, what's a method that people don't get drugs delivered into their body? Let's explore some new territory. And as far as I know, right, I don't do any drugs, but as far as I know, you can't just go to a dealer and get something like to eye drop heroin into your eyeballs.
Right, and that's what they did in this movie and in Looper. And there must be some place where this started. I don't imagine them just throwing this in quite randomly.
I mean, I almost feel like it's what smoking cigarettes is to film noir movies, where it's just an aesthetic that fits in, and it's meant to communicate the harshness of the not a post-apocalyptic, but like this harsh reality that they're in.
Okay, I actually really like that answer. I think that's more on brand than anything else. Because
you like that shit. I thought about that real hard.
It's because it's either that or like some film 30 years ago did this, and now everyone likes to put it in their films, like the Wilhelm scream.
Yeah, sure. That's a good reference too. Not as good as mine, but
no, yours. I think you're right. I think that's perfectly. It captures the aesthetic of the situation and the harshness of their world.
Paul, can you please praise me as well?
I think you've done a great job with that opinion you just had.
Okay, Paul, a little more confident, please. Please give me more praise.
What exactly am I praising you for again?
Damon, here for the dig.
You're late.
I wholeheartedly apologize.
You ready to dig?
Before we get started, I'm afraid I must interject. The points are more than adequate payment for the two of us. Rather, it's a means of transit we lack.
We need a ride up to the freighter.
Can I bring up the big guy at the end?
Oh yeah, I like to call him Gimp Guy.
I didn't love that. I mean, the whole idea that these mercenaries are here delivering a prisoner. Okay, whatever. Like that's fine. I can just accept that as part of the reality of the movie. But the guy got out and started like killing them. Like what is going on here? This makes no sense to me. The ending. I'm the entire time I'm sitting there and they're like going up to have their life saved. I'm like, how did that guy get out? Was he not locked in the entire time?
I was thinking that
free
too.
To move? Like what?
You know what it was? Is the director felt like throwing in a little Mad Max reference.
It does feel very Mad Maxy,
right? The costumes at that point.
Actually, what's funny is I thought of Pulp Fiction more than anything. I thought of the Gimp suit guy. That's why I call him Gimp Guy. But no, the Mad Max reference is way better.
Sam 2, AJ 0.
Yep. You win. My read on that was that he was waiting for an opportunity to bust out, and when they started going to war with C and Ezra, he just like busted out and then mauled that guy.
Yeah, I guess. I just, at the end of a movie, I don't want to have to sit there thinking for 30 seconds to try and justify what's going on. Like, it's up until the credits are halfway through that I'm like, I guess maybe that's a plausible explanation.
Yeah, right. I'm curious, this creature guy had no end game. Like okay, you guys take off with the ship and I'll just hang out here, I guess.
Were they torturing him in like a UV box or something?
It was some form of like slow death is what I understood.
Well, why would they be doing that to a prisoner though?
Well, because I think it was a contract to put that guy there. He probably did some bad shit, I'm guessing, and that's why they brought him there.
I thought they were kind of forcing him to breathe the air of the planet until he died.
Yeah,
that was sort of my read of the situation.
I think that's right.
Which also brings to me a question about what exactly is bad about the air of this place. I was a little unclear.
There was a reference to dust, and yeah, I mean, it's just toxic.
It's one of those things where they're just like, it's poisonous.
Yeah, I mean, it could have just be that, like the oxygen carbon dioxide balance is flipped, where it's just like mostly carbon. That would do it.
Or stick with me here, you guys.
Okay.
The bug queen things that laid all these magical gem sacks, they farted so much in the process of depositing their egg things that the planet is screwed.
Okay. So they cause like global warming or
poop spores in the air.
Poop spores. Okay. That's a plausible explanation. Yeah, it sounds like you're suggesting maybe this is just an Alien prequel movie.
Yeah, the poop spores caused the aliens.
Yep, that makes sense. It's all coming full circle in the genre. It's all leading back to Alien.
What's that book you carry around?
It's The Streamer Girl.
Streamer Girl.
It's a novel.
You wrote a novel?
No, I'm just writing it out. He said that it was a distraction and that I was wasting my time rereading the same book and that I needed to focus.
Focus on what?
Cultivating skills relevant to my field. Maybe he was right. Maybe if I had, then he wouldn't be dead.
You can't think like that. You go down that path, it's not good. You need someone to blame, you blame me. You need to think about your next move. Be on that freighter in a tick.
My name is C.
It's nice to meet you, C.
Well, do you guys have any other final notes you want to go over before we wrap up here?
I've kind of dished all my thoughts. I think this is a really creative and imaginative work that gives sci-fi a good name. Pedro Pascal has some really cool scenes with Sophie Thatcher, like when he's getting his arm cut off, or when they first initially meet. There's just a lot of cool filmed moments like that, and it's not a perfect film, but it was fun to watch and very creative.
Paul?
Yeah, I think the look of this movie, the look and feel of this movie was wonderful. I think that more than anything is the reason to watch it if you haven't. Besides that, I think it lacks some emotion and character development, and that keeps me from really loving the movie.
I agree. I think it could have benefited from maybe 20 more minutes and one other type of actor. It's hard to put my finger on it, but something to really bond these characters one step more, even though the cutting off the arm was really a good step in that direction.
Right. Yeah, that was my favorite part.
That was a good scene. That was a really...
He likes the bloodiness.
Well, it was a good scene.
I like when characters have to go through things. And the characters had to go through some stuff there that they didn't really... Even when like her dad died, as we talked about earlier, to me it just seemed like she was shocked, right? She didn't really go through this kind of... But you really saw, Ezra had to go through something right there. And that was really interesting to me.
I was also kind of stressed out from him like inducing hyperventilating on himself. he hyperventilated real hard.
Write him a note. Tell him you're concerned.
Yeah, well, I am sure he's fine now, but it just, if you've ever tried to hyperventilate yourself, it's not comfortable.
Well, boys, out of 10 shiny Orlac gems, what would you give this, and would you recommend it to others to watch?
I'd give it roughly 8, low 8s in the low 80% of Orlacs, and I definitely recommend it because I think that it's cool when you watch independent movies, especially sci-fi's, because even though they're not always stellar in every aspect, they're always something different and interesting on your palate to think about.
I'd probably go 7, and yeah, I'd recommend it. As I said, probably just to look at the helmets and just marvel at how they filmed this thing.
I concur. I think I would give this a 7.2 shiny Orlacs, just from the standpoint of aesthetic, awesome, feel of it, awesome, the story, pretty good. Just needs a little bit more drawn outness to it, but definitely check it out.
Paul, do you have any visual media, whether it be a TV show or movie, that you've enjoyed recently or even in the past that you would recommend to the audience?
I was just thinking about other sci-fi movies that were just kind of pure aesthetic and were wonderful based on that kind of pure aesthetic alone. And I thought a lot of really not a very similar movie, but I thought a lot about Under the Skin, which is a Scarlett Johansson movie from a while ago. It's just kind of crazy, weird little sci-fi movie where she's an alien, and it's kind of insane, but the whole movie is from the soundtrack, especially the soundtrack, which is wonderful, to just the costume design, to the lighting, everything, just kind of pure aesthetic and just kind of entrancing it that way.
Interesting. I've never even heard of that movie.
Yeah, I'll have to check it out. Well, Paul, thank you so much for being on the podcast. Do you have anything else you want to call out or anything like that to promote?
Yeah, do you want to promote? It's so funny how you ask people if they have anything to promote.
I should really just stop asking it because it's a secret.
You should, because no one's gonna plug anything.
I'm gonna keep this in the episode too, just so people know I'm never gonna do it ever again.
Samuel, what movie are we watching next?
Well, AJ, I'm glad you asked, and this time I have actually selected something ahead of this recording. We are going to be watching The Sound of Metal.
Oh, I've actually heard good things about that.
And it looks pretty dope.
It does look good.
As always, thank you everybody for listening to the Video Lab podcast.
You can find my review for this movie and other movies at my blog, asajthinks.com, and be sure to rate and subscribe to the podcast wherever you are listening.
Until next time, see ya. Peace.